Welcome, welcome, welcome. This is Chris and Rick Talk Guitars. That's Chris over there.
Hello.
And I'm Rick. And today we're going to talk about watershed moments pertaining to the guitar.
Okay.
And so, for me, I think some come to mind that made an impression on me. I mean, I wasn't alive for some of these, but some I was, but I didn't necessarily see them at the time. But one in particular that I'll start with is Buddy Holly's first appearance on the Ed Sullivan Show.
Okay.
You know, this was 57, and at the time, people were playing acoustics and jazz boxes, and that's what you saw as a guitar. And here, this lanky Texan is on the black and white TV screen playing this weird electric guitar with horns on it and a weird headstock, and he might as well have just dropped out of the sky, because it just was strange.
Right.
And so I think that is one of those watershed moments where you see this artist, he's playing this new guitar, it's brand new, and I think it made an impact on a lot of people. I certainly have seen many guitar players talk about that, Buddy Holly in that moment, or Buddy Holly and his Strat being a huge influence on them, like,
right.
Loving that guitar, wanting to pick up a guitar. But I just think it's interesting because, again, at the time, we kind of thought of guitar as acoustics and jazz boxes, and boom, here's this solid body, horned devil in the hands of this Texan. And I thought that was really cool.
Right. So that would have been, what year was that, 56?
57.
57,
yeah.
Okay. So that would have meant the Telecaster was out for, a few years.
Yeah.
So that was actually the third year of the Stratocaster, too. So,
yeah.
That was probably its first big network TV in front of thousands and thousands of people.
Exactly.
That's kind of what you're saying?
Yeah. I think people might have saw those guitars around, but not like that in that moment and reaching that many people, right? That's another thing about TV, right? You could reach a ton of people in one shot, and then boom, it's like, then it makes an impact. And I think that's what happened with the Strat, right? It's like, yeah, people might have saw them around, or you might have saw a country band in a bar. Oh, the guy's playing a telly. But here you have this television show where this artist is playing this weird guitar, Mm-hmm. So I think it's kind of cool. And again, like I've just read interviews and seen video clips of various guitar players talking about Buddy Holly and those Ed Sullivan appearances too, having a huge impact on them, and them loving the Strat and wanting to play a Strat or pick up the guitar and play it.
I guess it's really hard to just even get your mind into a place where you think the Stratocaster was weird, because we're so used to it. It's the most copied guitar ever. But there was a time when, it was from outer space, from the stratosphere.
Exactly.
So, that's cool. So that's what you mean by watershed moment, something that changed the course of guitar playing?
Exactly.
Okay.
Or just changed it was a paradigm shift for guitars, like you just said, right? At that time, it was the 50s. It was conservative. Sure, there were cars with fins and all this other stuff. And so a lot of these guitar body styles were shaped after. But to me, the Stratocaster does just signal a departure from, normal guitar shapes, body shapes and stuff.
Right.
So... And also, it's kind of sexy too, right? It's got the contour to it. It's got kind of a sexy body shape, and it's just kind of, it seems a little illicit, like a little edgy, actually, for that time period.
Right.
Kind of, so, yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. And another one, and one that really stuck with me for many reasons, but is Dylan going electric in 65. Because here you have this darling of the folk the folk revival, the folk movement.
Right.
He's the guy. He's the guy they put all their eggs in his basket, and he's playing an acoustic guitar, singing his songs. And then all of a sudden he's like, you know what? Fuck this. I'm going electric.
Right.
And he gets Mike Bloomfield, who's a huge blues guitar prodigy from the time, and some other dudes. And then they play the Newport Folk Festival. And it's just bedlam, because these little folkies are just beside themselves. Here's Dylan with a Stratocaster again, playing this electric music. And it just, again, this is a huge paradigm shift, because he's an acoustic folk guy. And now all of a sudden he's going rock, kind of folk rock or rock, whatever you want to call it. with an electric band, and so
right. And it was interesting because I was just reading a book that mentioned that the book was called Everybody Had a Notion, which is kind of about the Beach Boys and other bands from kind of that era, and that kind of signaled a huge migration from New York City to the West Coast at right around that time. So him going electric kind of signaled a big switch from Greenwich Village out to like LA for a lot of those folkies who decided to go electric. I totally understand like those folkies kind of turning on him, maybe not in the way that they did, but you know, if you have this type of music that you like and it fits a certain pattern and suddenly it's different and they may, you know, it's like, okay, I'm not really in, if I wanted rock and roll, I'd be into rock and roll, but this is like, like you said, they're great hopeful playing this music and they're totally following. So it is forever changed for them too. So, I mean, the way they reacted may not have been the way that I would react because, you know, I mean, I wouldn't want to hold any artist back. It's like you should be able to follow your muse if you want to do that. At the same time, if it doesn't speak to me, it's like, okay, follow your muse. I'm going to go over here and enjoy this. So I totally understand why they did, but I just think the reaction is kind of hilarious, like just the way they freaked out so much. But that happens in any genre of music. If you think about it, even somebody like Clarence White from the Byrds, who like is one of my favorite guitar players, and he's like plays like he's from outer space, but what he did was like he mastered, you know, bluegrass music, and he's like, okay, I've done all I can do there, so I'm gonna just do these other things. So he went electric, and he just came up with some really like from outer space kind of like a style that he created. And I'm sure like a lot of his bluegrass fans, he may have like, you know, he may have put them off, but at the same time, you can't hold those people back,
right?
Anyways,
and I think you raise a good point. In the moment, I mean, for all I know, I might have reacted that way because I think of it too in terms of like, I know that if I and many people are into an artist, right, and and if they've been around long enough to have a catalog of music that you've come to love, if I see them on tour, if I see them live, I want to hear those songs. I don't want to hear the new album that I'm going to have to get used to. You know what I mean?
Right. No.
I want to hear that stuff that I love, that I know you've done, that just resonates with me. And similarly to your point, it's like I mean, now we look back at the reaction and say, wow, it was crazy. But I mean, you can hear they're shaken to their core. They're calling him Judas. They're like, I totally agree. It's like they were invested in this guy emotionally, like this was their guy, and then all of a sudden he's doing this. But after the fact, you know, hopefully people realize, yeah, exactly, he's an artist and he's got to go where this stuff takes him.
There was was Scorsese the one that did that movie?
Yes, and it's a great
and that was
movie
like
too.
I think they were in England on that tour with that band, and they were interviewing the crowd, and there were a bunch of people, like disgruntled people they were talking to, and one dude, you know, and one of the guys was saying that, yeah, now he's doing this rock and roll, anyone can do that, and there's someone in the crowd that goes, not anyone can play like these guys, and it was so true. It's like, you know, he was so into him not being his thing anymore that he was missing that it was like a phenomenal thing that was going on. So you wonder if those people today go, yeah, I guess I should have, like, you know, kind of overreacted when you look at, you know, the output past that moment.
Oh, yeah.
And you know, on the bright side, you have two eras of Dylan. You know,
exactly.
I like them both. You know,
Me too. Me too.
You get both of these things, but we all have moments where, I mean, for me, it's like I loved fucking Kiss Destroyer. Love Gun was too much. It was too commercial for me.
Well, hello.
I said, hey, goodbye. There's a toy gun in the fucking sleeve. I'm out, and that's where I checked out of the Kiss.
I love that correlation too to Kiss.
Bandwagon. So I can definitely see that. But now, as an adult now,
well, sure. Now you can appreciate
Love Gun is great.
Gun.
I like that too. It's, I don't know.
No, but
live and learn.
That's a great point, though, because it's always tough when you're in the eye of the storm or in the moment. You can't think about it contextually outside of that context, right? Because you're in it, you're living it. You paid money to go see Dylan. You're expecting him to play a whole set of acoustic music that you love, and here you go in. Just imagine going into that show and he's got this Strat on, and there's Mike Bloomfield, and there's a band, and it's like, what the hell? I could imagine people were freaked out, and then he
spit Boone's Farm out of their nose.
But another thing that I dig is some artists would have been so shaken by that, but Dylan was like, turn it up. Yeah. Fuck this shit. I'm doing this. He was committed to it, man. And I totally dug that about him because, like, I probably would have acquiesced. It's like, oh shit, they hate it, you know. Right. And the band, you know, imagine being the band, like Mike Bloomfield and these other guys, are they getting booed and called Judas, and they're like, oh shit, we have to do a set of this stuff. Right. But anyway, I thought it was so cool that he just stuck to his guns and said, no, we're doing this, and fuck it, turn it up.
And it's definitely one of those Watershed, look who's laughing now moments.
Exactly,
too, so.
Like you say, there's two eras of Dylan that are it's all cool, and I dig it all. But yeah, in the moment, I can just imagine. I probably would have been the same. I would have been next to some guy named Joshua, being really pissed off at Dylan for
throwing his Boda bag at the stage.
Well, you heard the I don't know how true it was, but Pete Seeger. Like, he was so incensed. People said he went and got an axe to cut the chop the power cable.
I don't know how true that is.
I don't know if it's true or not.
I saw a documentary, and I don't think it is as true as it makes for a good story, but I don't think it's as true. But
he was pissed, and he was pissed, and the Peter, Paul, and Mary dude. Which Peter, Paul, I don't know which guy, but Peter? He was pissed. And they actually they forced him to come out and do an acoustic set or a couple songs in acoustic so that he would placate these crazed lunatic fans.
Fanatics of music. Like, I mean, think about punk rockers. Punk rockers are the same way. It's like, you played a solo.
Exactly.
Fuck you, Judas.
Exactly.
I mean, everything. And it's so funny. The best music comes out of people who just say, fuck it.
Many people are like, well, shit, I don't want to piss all these people off.
Country people, punk rock people, rock metal. That's not metal enough.
Exactly.
I liked it when it was metal. But, you know, we do. I mean, I guess it's how do you approach somebody? See if I have an example of somebody whose music you love and they make a dud. I mean, and you're like, okay. I mean, I don't just throw them out and say, you know, no, fuck that. It's like, I wait for the next record.
Or a similar thing. I saw Dylan like several years ago at Bumbershoot, and his voice is almost gone. Right. Like, it's raspy and gravelly to the point of like really bad. But I didn't give a fuck because it was Bob Dylan. Right. You know what I mean? So I cut him slack because he's got this body of work that you can't touch. He's got this storied history, and it's not like I don't know. I just guess he gets much more benefit of the doubt than other. You know what I mean? Like, he's got this credibility about him. I don't know. He's earned it. He's earned it. Dues. Yeah, but you're right. It's like, I'm much more willing to give a pass to somebody that I think has put out some great work, and then maybe they tried something new or something or whatever, and it just didn't work for me, or, you know, and then I'm like, okay, well, that didn't work, but maybe the next one will be something cool. But yeah, I totally dig that. I totally relate to that. But yeah, I have such respect for people, and maybe it's not even a choice for them. It's just like, no, I'm just doing this. It's not like I'm trying to be a hero, or, you know what I mean, or trying to piss people off. This is just what I have to do. You know what I mean? I'd love to please you, but I can't. I'm not going to do it. Right. And I love that. Because you're right. That's when some good stuff happens. It's like, no, I'm not going to bend just because you want me to do the stuff you want me to do, you know? Like,
right. And you know what? To be perfectly honest with you, I wasn't even fucking thinking about you when I came on this shit. Exactly. It was the furthest thing away from my mind.
I don't even know who you are.
I shit. I mean, truthfully, I mean, if you had to think about pleasing people every time you made something, I mean, I guess people did. Bands had to, like, please record labels and shit. Right. So I bet you that gave us a lot of tepid music. So, I mean...
Well, sure, and it's our nature. We want to be liked.
Well, of course.
It's a human nature. You want to be liked, but again, like, that's why I really respect artists or anybody who sticks to their guns, not to be an ass or belligerent, but just like, man, I can't do that for you. I'm sorry. I wish I could, but I can't. I'm going to do this other stuff.
You should have left the toy gun out of Love Gun. I mean, you just alienated a bunch of hardcore fans.
Lesson learned.
Jesus, sellouts.
Gosh.
What other Watershed moments do you have there in your little bag of tricks?
I'm going to pull one out by an artist that you and I talk about a lot.
Uh-oh.
I totally dig this artist. You dig him too, but you've got, I wouldn't say reservations. I'll let you talk about it. I'm not going to put words in your mouth, you ding-dong. It's Jimi Hendrix.
Oh, Jimi Hendrix. That was a watershed moment for guitar playing, definitely.
It was a huge watershed moment, and I'm referring to when he played Hey Joe on British TV, like in 66, 67, something around there. Mm-hmm. And all these little British kids, these wannabe rockers, saw this dude on TV with a swapped over Strat, dressed crazy. It's a black dude, playing Hey Joe. And he did the whole thing. He played with his teeth and did all this crazy shit. And Paul Rogers, I heard an interview with him, and he said he saw that broadcast and it changed his life.
Right.
He's like, shit, this is insane.
Again, there's something where it's really easy for us to just go, yeah, well, I don't see what the big deal is, because I mean, you had to be there. Yeah. And I love reading stories like Pete Townsend, Jeff Beck, all these people who are like great musicians on their own, and just how devastated they were, then terrified when they first saw him. It's like, oh, our time is done on this planet. And it's so funny to think about that. Like, Jeff Beck's got nothing to worry about.
No.
You know, in retrospect, you're thinking, but at the time he was such a force, and just like of just awe-inspiring, like, you know, just a force.
Yeah.
So it just like shook all these people to their core. So that's very fascinating. There was nothing like that up until that time.
No, and you're so right. It's like we have the luxury of seeing this, you know, in hindsight. But at the time, he may as well have been dropped out of the sky. He dressed crazy. He played it left-handed. It was just insane. And he was a badass on guitar.
Right.
But the kicker too is, like you and I talked about, is you know, once you get past the pyrotechnics and the guitar, you know, theatrics, his songs were great. He was a Bob Dylan fan. He loved Bob Dylan.
Right.
He would get his friends to go, oh, check this out, man. And they'd go, oh, whatever, let's get stoned. But he loved Bob Dylan. He loved the lyrics of Bob Dylan. So if you listen to Jimmy's lyrics, it sounds like he's kind of trying to cop Dylan's thing. But in many ways, it's cool. Like Castles Made of Sand or Little Wing, all these cool songs. If you listen to the lyrics, they're funky and they're psychedelic, but they're kind of... You can see the inspiration he got from Bob Dylan. At least I can, I think.
I can too. No, I have Axis Total Love. Like I think that you were alluding to is I wouldn't consider myself a huge fan. I have lots of, you know, respect for him, but I never really like clicked with me that much with like a lot of artists from them. I had to go back later, and I did with him too. You know, I don't think I was really ready for the music of Jimi Hendrix. I wasn't ready for the music of other people, and now I totally appreciate it a lot. But a huge stumbling block for me with Hendrix was getting past the parlor tricks, which so many people just keyed into. It was like, look, he's playing with his teeth, he's doing this and he's doing that, which to me is like, that was so just such a minute part of what I like about him and his essence is. Totally. As far as like his music, his songwriting, and you know, his presentation. The parlor tricks were kind of a distraction for me. It's like, who cares? I mean, at the time, no one had seen that, so I can see them being completely blown away. And it's same with like Eddie Van Halen as a guitar player. Me in 1979, you know, so check it out. You're a guitar player. I was a young, you know, just started playing guitar. I didn't really dig Van Halen.
That's interesting. Yeah,
I do now. I love the first two records, but at the same time, I was way into UFO. Yeah. I loved Michael Schenker. Now I appreciate them both.
Yeah, but I think, you know, to be honest, I think for a kid your age, you had enough. You were discerning enough to see through the parlor tricks. I wasn't. I was like a fish. Like that lure caught me. Man, when I've heard that album, when I heard Eruption, that blew my fucking mind. And I had to get the album, and I had to go out. I had to try to learn all that crap and stuff, and I loved it. But so I totally, I kind of envy people like you who at a young age were able to kind of be, because like your love of UFO and Michael Schenker, I think is totally, I loved it too at that age, but I wasn't articulating why. But you know, you and I both talked about, you know, he's got this crazy German precision, but with this sloppy, soul-y, coolness, and is melodic, and it's all this cool stuff. But
it's lyrical, and
it's lyrical.
And I like that. And Eddie Van Halen is totally capable of that. Yeah. But he went the other route, and he relied more on a lot of the tricks that he invented. Yeah. So I mean, it was revolutionary. But where Michael Schenker was more feel, and that's when you go back to like what I'm talking about with Hendrix is I'm way more into what is said than how it's said. You know what I mean? Yeah. So it's like you're delivering this line, and if it's a good line and I connect with it, I like it. It doesn't matter if you're doing something that looks really hard to get there. Yeah. It's just what it is. You know. So you know, doing like tricky fretboard tricks. I mean, if you say something cool with it and it speaks to me, I'm gonna like it. But I'm not going to like it just because of that. And I always wondered myself if it has anything to do with I'm not a sports person. I don't like sports or, you know, competitive things like that. I just have no interest in that. Yeah. And that kind of like, maybe I can see some parallels. Maybe I'm nuts.
No, I think that's like, a good correlation.
It's like, it's this guy that's really hard because it's easy for people who don't know how the guitar is even played to see something like that and go, that's really hard. It must be good. Right. Instead of like, The classic example is, for a while, floating around on YouTube was that video of R.I.P. Prince, and they're doing While My Guitar Gently Weeps, and they do a really good version of the song. It's very touching, and everyone freaks out about Prince's part at the end, which is great. I mean, Prince is an awesome guitar player, another force of nature. But I was way more blown away by the dude, I don't even know who he was, that was playing like Clapton's part in the song, because I'm like, he's interpreting the lines from the record, he's doing a really good job, he's got great tone, and it's like, there's a lot of finesse involved with doing that, and everybody else is freaking out over like the bombastic Prince stuff at the end, which I'm not saying is not good. It's just different perspectives of where you come from.
I think it's great, this competitive nature of guitar playing, and people will say, oh, he's a better guitar player than that guitar player. And a lot of times they say that because this person can play faster than this other person, or this person can do more crazy, hard, difficult things than this other person. But
or it's just more obvious that the lay person can look at them and know that they're doing something.
But once, like you say, luckily, hopefully, if you get older or you start to analyze it more, you'll say, well, there's no good or bad. There's no, like, if this guitar player, there's all kinds of guitar players that play really simple or not difficult stuff, but it's beautiful. It's awesome. Like the Edge, for instance. He gets a bad rap, I think, anyway.
Oh, he totally does.
He created his own sound, his signature sound with echo and his tone, and he plays weird shapes on the fretboard. But what he does is iconic. And it's the foundation of that band's sound. And so... But I'm sure, and it might get loud. He shows you what he's doing, and it's really simple. It's just he's hitting two different notes, essentially. But when he puts the echo on, it's like becomes this big thing. And so your average person, maybe, who is into this competitive thing, will go, oh, he sucks. He's a shitty guitar player. But no, he's not. He's a great guitar player because he's used that instrument to express himself in a way that is unique and distinct and is the foundation of that band's sound.
No, I agree. That's funny because I was thinking of him when we were talking about that. That's one dude. I mean, again, YouTube, you like him or not. I mean, he created a sound, and sure, it might only be a couple notes and a delay pedal to do all that, but you fucking come up with
exactly.
That. It's like, it's not. I mean, it happened. And if it was that easy, there would be 50 million people who came up that. Exactly. There wasn't. There was one.
So. Exactly. And so there's tons of guitar players like that you and I both love who, your lay person would go, oh, well, it doesn't really look like they're doing much, or, but just listen to what they're doing. Like the rhythm guitar player in the Prince thing, I thought the same thing. It's like, God, that guy's playing some tasty shit. Why don't you put the camera on that guy? He's playing some tasty, really tasty stuff. It's like, but again, like when I was younger, I was a sucker for like Eddie Van Halen or Michael Schenker, for that matter. He was a guitar god back then. He was playing all that stuff.
Shit. He was flashy as shit.
But
he could play really slow and pretty.
Oh, totally.
And then just go so fast. You're like, what the fuck are you doing, you asshole? I was trying to learn solo.
I got to slow it down. Those are great points that relate to this whole topic of watershed moments, and there's a bunch of them, but these three I kind of thought about because for me they were important to me, and I think they were important to a lot of players. Getting back to the Jimi Hendrix thing, I saw this great interview again too with, I think it was Pete Townsend, and he was talking about he and Eric Clapton went to the movies one night, and they weren't really they were acquaintances but not friends. They didn't hang out together, but they both went to the movie this night and sat next to each other and talked about, what are we going to do? This guy, should we sell our shit? Because this guy is fucking up. He's a badass, and that's the impact he had on that in England. Chaz Chandler knew. He brought him here and says, these guys are going to shit their pants, and they did.
But it just seems so silly in retrospect. It's like, because it's music. We need as much as we can get. You guys can do. You don't have to do what he does, but just I'm really fascinated by that whole, because everybody was paranoid and like terrified, and so it's just hard to fathom what they thought.
But I thought that was such a cool story because it brought them together for that moment, and just a little bit, and then they went back to their kind of acquaintance after that. But I was just fascinated by that, and like you said, there were lots of other artists or aspiring artists at that time who kind of had the same feeling. It's like, we've all I think as guitar players we've had that feeling where we're around a guitar player that we think is so freaking good. It can either inspire you or make you want to sell all your crap. You know what I mean?
Right. I just learned how to either be inspired or just like you just find some way to go like, that's really great. I'm inspired by it. It's great. I can't do that, and I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
And then you just find something that you can't do that you think is cool and work on that a little bit more. But no, I mean, I'm trying to think if I've ever felt like, more than anything that like blew me away, I think it inspired me and made me want to try to be better. But I don't think I've seen anything where I go, I might as well just fucking quit. I probably said that though, because that's just some way you express like how cool something is. It's like, what the fuck am I doing? And that, if I'm truthful, that's probably a lot, because there's a lot of good guitar players around.
Yeah.
So,
and I've kind of had that feeling before. I like, some dude is playing this stuff and I'm just blown away, and it's like, Jesus, like, it's like, yeah, you're right. I don't want to sell my stuff, but it's like, it's kind of like, but exactly, you have to find ways that you can get better at what you do and get inspired and play your stuff, because it's still fun. I love playing, but it's like sometimes you see, or I just look at old videos of like Chet Atkins and Jerry Reed and go, Jesus Christ, I wish I could play like that, but there's no way in hell I ever can.
I mean, you'd have to go back and start over and just like pay attention.
Yeah.
At this point, it's like, no, I just take what you can get and enjoy the rest of the ride.
I think that's what I'll have to do. Awesome. I think that was a really fun topic to discuss, and I'm glad we did it.
I think this was a Watershed episode.
We can only hope, Chris. But for those of you out there listening, if there is anybody listening, we really appreciate it, because we enjoy doing this a ton. And go on social media and like us and share our episodes, and check us out on iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, all of that jazz. Chris, you want to say anything?
I want to say thank you for listening, and talk to you later. You know what I mean?
Awesome.